writers, you're listening to the Kobo ReWriting Life Podcast, where we highlight an episode from our backlist that will bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm your host, Tara Kremen, Director of Kobo Writing Life. This week, we're talking all about historical romance. I chose this interview with Grace Callaway from 2023 because I think it's wonderful. It has really great advice on both writing and researching historical romances, because I always wonder how authors don't get caught in the research, but Grace has a lot of good advice here, and I hope you enjoy.
On today's episode of the podcast, we spoke to Grace Callaway, a USA Today and international best-selling author of hot and heart-melting historical romance. Her career was launched with her debut novel, Her Husband's Harlot, which was a finalist for the Romance Writers of America Golden Heart Award and a #1 national best-selling Regency romance. Since then, her books have continued to top the historical romance best-selling charts and retailers everywhere.
As a big romance reader, I really enjoyed our conversation with Grace. We talked to her about her publishing journey, how indie publishing has changed since her start in 2011, her love of all things historical romance, and the research that goes into her books. We also talked about her new release, which is Glory in the Master of Shadows. Hi, everyone. We're joined today by USA Today bestselling historical romance author Grace Callaway. Hi, Grace. Thanks for joining us today. Can you kick us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hi. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast. So as you mentioned, I write historical romance, and I've been doing it for about, like a little over 10 years. So my historical romances are super steamy. I've got about 20 of them, and they're in different series, but they're all set in the same universe. So they take place in Regency and Victorian England, although, it's kind of my own world that I created. So there's some different elements as well. There's a lot of mystery and adventure. Yeah. So that's kind of what I do. And it's been great fun.
You mentioned you've been publishing for almost 10 years now. Can you tell us a little bit about your publishing journey and why you decided to take the indie publishing route?
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting. I think I came into publishing at a really interesting time. So I wrote my first book in 2009. And back then, indie it was sort of becoming a thing, but it wasn't really a thing yet. Actually, my profession is I'm a clinical psychologist, and writing was really just kind of a hobby and stress relief for me. After giving birth to my child, my son, who has some pretty significant special needs, I actually started writing as just something that I just did for me, for fun. So I'd, come home from the hospital and I'd be working on this book. Anyway, that book took me about a year to write. And then I was like, oh, well, I wonder if this is something that could get published. So I submitted the book to, back then, agents were kind of the only route to publishing. And I had no idea about the publishing world at all. It was just, I read a lot of romances and just struck me as something that was kind of this fun dream job to do. So I got accepted by an agent who began shopping the book around. And then a little bit after that, that book finaled in the Romance Writers of America. Back then they had, I don't know if they still have it, this Golden Heart contest for unpublished people. So it's kind of everything started happening at once. But my agent could not sell my book. And the feedback from, I think back then there were 7 big publishers or 10, I can't remember. Things have changed so much in the last 10 years. It's kind of insane when you think about it. But the feedback was people really thought it had an interesting voice. They really liked it, but they literally could not figure out what to do with it because my work did not fit neatly in any sort of box. It's super steamy, but it also, it's historical set, but it has a lot of mystery and adventure. And they're just what do we do with this? Simultaneously, I had some really good friends who had started honestly killing it in indie. They were sort of at the ground level with the whole indie publishing thing. And they were like, well, Grace, why don't you try to self-publish? And I was still hemming and hawing because I'm a hemming and hawing kind of person. So I was finally, okay, well, we'll see what happens. I've got nothing to lose. So I put that first book, which is Her Husband's Harlot, up. And within, I think a month or two, it hit #1 in its genre. And I was okay, I was not like expecting this. This is kind of strange. So that's kind of how I got started. But I didn't commit to writing full time for a really long time because I still had this career as a clinical psychologist, which, that's another story. There's a real struggle to kind of give that up because I really love my work. I found that very meaningful. And so anyway, I continued releasing kind of slowly. And, that was 2010. So actually, no, I've been doing this for 13 years. Sorry, it's 2023. I lost a few years in the pandemic. Yeah. So now, whatever, 13 years later, I've got like 20 something books. So that's kind of been my journey. I went full time, like fully 100% writing, only in about 2018. Although 2014, I cut back at the hospital significantly. So that's been my journey. It's been amazing. I can't believe I get to do this full time. It's just the greatest job in the world.
Has your release schedule changed at all since you've been going from full time versus part time?
So in a perfect world, I would like to release 2 books a year, which probably doesn't sound like a lot to some writers who are very prolific, including some of my friends, and I'm just sort of in awe. For me to write the kind of books that I write, which are my books are long, they're like 100,000 words. They're historical, so I have to do like a lot of research. I mean, my latest release is like historical Chinese and like English, so I have to do like a lot of research for that. So I think, when I was working full time, I was doing maybe like 1 book every year and a half. So I am so grateful to my readers who like waited for me. They've been amazing. So when I'm really on, I'm like 2 books a year. For the last couple of years, because of the pandemic, I've been like a book every 8 to 9 months, just because my childcare like issues. And I just want to make sure the book gets the time that it needs. So I'm trying to do 2 books a year.
I feel like the pandemic really kind of like either threw a wrench in a lot of people's writing schedules or just like freed up everything. There's like no in between.
That's
the past
true.
couple of years have been wild.
Yeah, no, it's been crazy. I mean, it's weird because I feel like the first year, I don't know how long has this been going on? I think the first year or 2, I felt like super creative. Like it was my outlet. Like I was like, okay, I need to like immerse myself in this fantasy world. Like the end is nigh. Like I just gotta like pour myself into this and send out like, for my readers too, like a world that they can escape to. I feel like we all really needed that, especially at the first year or 2. And then the last year has been a little bit harder because it's kind of like the little bit, Bo has joined us. It's just been a little bit more of the like real world coming back. But it's always like the practical things, if my kid is not in school, then I have problems getting writing time in.
You mentioned kind of the fantasy historical element of your writing, how it's kind of an escape. Have you always been kind of drawn to historical romance as a reader as well? And was there one author who specifically kind of drew you in?
So I love historical romance. I mean, that's what I primarily read when actually it's really funny because I have this very concrete memory of like, I went to the University of Michigan. And back then, that's where Borders was headed in Ann Arbor. And it had this like huge Borders bookstore, which is where I went to work on my dissertation. But instead of working on my dissertation, I would go to the romance section. It was so much more interesting than like dealing with all this research. So the books that really inspired me as a reader, starting off with like Amanda Quick's, she wrote some great historicals that had a lot of that mystery element in them. And I just really loved those books. I think my early love of historicals was her and Lisa Kleypas, of course, Loretta Chase, kind of like the classics of historical romance in the 80s and 90s.
Do you still read in the genre, or now that you've started to write your own historical romance, do you find it can be hard to separate the two?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I find it very hard to read when I'm writing. So I have not read a lot of historical romance lately. It's just, it's kind of an interesting thing. I've heard other writers talk about it. They don't really kind of read what they write. But it was really great seeing Bridgerton get all that exposure and like just, seeing the love of historical kind of come back. I mean, it was such a big thing in the 80s. I think that's when I first kind of encountered them, some of the bodice rippers and other steamy books. But I'm glad it's coming back.
Do you find yourself connecting with a lot of other historical romance authors online? Like, what's that community like?
I think romance authors in general are a very generous and like welcoming and wonderful group, really more than any other profession I've been a part of. Although I guess I've only been part of 2 professions, and psychologists, they're very nice too. But, like just with writers, you just kind of speak the same language, So yeah, I have, a lot of friends in the historical romance community, and they're certainly like wonderful. I was just part of an anthology called Duke in a Box, which I just thought was the greatest title ever.
Such a good title.
Yeah. And actually credit to that goes to Darcy Burke, who is a fabulous historical romance author. So, we all kind of wrote short stories for this anthology, and we marketed it together, and shared our audiences. And I thought it was like a wonderful thing. So there's a lot of collaboration going on, I think, within historical romance. But then also just within romance in general, I have a lot of good friends who write in other genres. We do a lot of like yearly retreats, and we just came back from Carlsbad not so long ago. And it was, a blast, like 15 romance writers like writing on the beach. So it's great. And it's a combination of things. I think as an indie author, there's a craft aspect of it. So I have friends who are like just fantastic at brainstorming, and I can go to them with like, okay, I am stuck here. I need to figure out what is this clue that needs to be discovered here in order for this yada yada to happen. And they can come up with an answer right away, right? We can speak in shorthand, whereas, my husband, who's also a writer, he's a poet, but he doesn't read romance. So it's a little harder for him. I'm so if it's like a grumpy sunshine situation, and he's like, what are you talking about? So, romance, I think authors and readers have a shorthand, right? So it's wonderful to do that. But I think where I was also going was with my indie author friends, there's also like a big business component of it, right? Because you're basically a small publisher, you're an entrepreneur. And so, at our retreat, we did a lot of the craft stuff, but we also talked a lot about, business and marketing and all that fun stuff, which is ever changing in the indie world.
That's one thing we hear a lot when talking about the indie author community, especially the romance author community, is that everybody is so just open and willing to let you know what works for them, understanding that what works for one author might not work for the other, but they're willing to let you know what's working for them so you can give it a shot. And I don't know, it's always so heartwarming to hear that it's true.
Yeah. And I think, part of it is that it's a community of women. To be very I love having all these women friends, and I just feel like women can be incredibly supportive of one another. And we're all doing something we love, and we all understand that, when one person succeeds, it's we all do, right? A lot of it is, I think, raising visibility of romance. Although it's crazy because romance is so by far the best-selling genre. So how much visibility do we need? But for us to be considered, taken seriously for what we do. And it's very interesting for me because in my other life, I was, people addressed me as Dr. So-and-so. And then when I introduce myself, I'm like, oh, I'm a romance writer. And it's a little bit of a different reaction depending on who you're talking to. And I'm like, it surprises me because to me, this is I just love romance so much. It is the best thing in the world to be doing, to be able to, make a living creating stories that lift and inspire people. I mean, how much, just a wonderful job.
Yeah, I really agree. And I think it's getting a little bit better now, but there used to be a really big stigma around being a romance reader. And I think maybe since COVID, we're seeing people kind of embrace more. And since COVID and also since Bridgerton, I think kind of brought it more mainstream. We're seeing a lot of people kind of learn more about the romance genre and kind of embrace the tropes that they're into. And Book Talk has changed this a little bit too. So it's always good to see. But yeah, there is still a little bit of that stigma when you say you read a lot of romance. People are kind of quick to judge.
Yeah, it's strange because I've always been so happy to say, oh, I love romance. It's the only thing I read. I don't know what it is. It's I almost feel like it's this cultural thing of because romance values the happy ending and the fantasy, that this is somehow simple or whatever. But that's what I want,
especially right now. Like
Right?
we could all use
I
a
mean,
happy ending right now.
I don't need to read like a lot of depression fiction, but I've always kind of been like that. And I personally think this is because of indie publishing. The diversity that's available in romance now is like greater than it's ever been before, I think, in like the history of romance. And, diverse books, I mean, like anything. It could be, like my next book, which features, multicultural characters, or like queer books, or books about sci-fi monsters. I mean, I just love that writers can write what they want and they can find there's an audience for it, So I just think romance is actually very complex and like evolving and wonderful.
And I'm going to take a hard left turn into writing romance, because I want to talk to you about your writing process, especially with historical romance, because you mentioned off the top that like it involves a lot of research in order to make your books historically accurate. So I'm really curious how your research process and your writing process kind of mesh. Like, do you have an idea for a book and when you want to set it and then research, or do you research and find something and be like, oh, that'd be cool?
So even though I have I have 4 series. Yeah, I'm on my 4th series. They actually all happen on the same timeline, set in the same universe. So it's sort of almost dictated now, like, and I'm in 2nd generation characters. So like her birth date was set like 8 books ago or something, my current heroine. So there are a lot of things already decided for me. But my very first book I set in Regency because I was reading a lot of Regency. And in retrospect, I kind of wish I'd said it like a little earlier in the Regency, because that book was set, Her Husband's Harlot was set in like 1818. So I really only had like one series that could take place in the Regency. And then I was like the in-between between Regency and Victorian. But so like now the historical setting is sort of determined by where I am in my story universe. But I think like for this current book, because it had some elements of like China in the 1830s, I definitely read a lot before I started writing, because I felt like I didn't know enough to write the story. And it's not just like information. Like I try not to do too much info dumping in, but I think where it really becomes important is kind of understanding the character, which is where I always begin, and their point of view, which is so culturally informed, right? By like where they're from and, what time in history it is. So I do a lot of reading before, and then, during, things always come up. Like, in the middle of this book, I was like, I should probably read the Tao Te Ching like now. So, but that's actually what I love, because I'm a bit of a nerd. I love the research. I love learning about new things. I mean, this is why writing will never bore me, because there's like infinite things to explore. So, when I do research, it's not just like the historical research. It's like research about, it can be like about clothing and like historical things, but there's so many research rabbit holes. I can't even. In fact, this is probably a tip for someone who is interested in writing historical romance. I mean, I think it's important to do some background reading before you start, so you generally know what you're talking about. But if there's a way for you to kind of save the research as you go along, like to compartmentalize it a little bit and not stop every time like you're in your manuscript, that will help you get your book done a lot quicker. And that took me about 18 books to figure out. So you're welcome.
That's great advice. Save you from falling down wild Wikipedia holes mid-sentence.
Oh my God. Like, it could be something like, I'm like, oh, he was unlocking a door. And I'm like, one sec, what kind of Chinese locks were there in like 1836? And so I'm like researching the history of Chinese locks, which go way back, by the way. So I was fine. It's just like, there are so many little things that if you research everything as you go along, it will take you a long time. And the thing I always say is I'm a mad reviser. Like I will revise, like up until the very last minute that I can upload this book, I will be tweaking it. So you can always take care of that later, for sure.
And especially as an indie author, you can kind of just go in and fix stuff whenever. So it's nice to have that control too.
That's true. Yes. Yes. You have a lot of control as an indie author, for better or for worse.
Yeah, that's also true. So we wanted to talk about your series, Lady Charlotte Society of Angels, which is kind of a historical romance spin on Charlie's Angels. So can you tell us how that series came to be?
I think this series is sort of like a culmination of just like who I am, honestly, like mishmashing like a bunch of cultural influences. So I love Charlie's Angels growing up. This is going to age me, but that's fine. Yeah. So I wanted to be Kelly. It's all good. She was so glamorous. So I love them. I've always loved like Nancy Drew type characters, like the female detectives. I mean, all my books have had like kind of female solving crime, but then it was kind of perfect because now I have this second generation of like young women who were brought up to be pretty independent because their moms were all very spirited as well, right? So I was just like, this is like the perfect setup where, you know, they are just like curious, they're intelligent, they want to do good in the world. Yeah, it just kind of fit everything that I like to do. So that's how it came about, really, I think.
And your latest release is the next installment in this series, Glory and the Master of Shadows. Can you give us a brief spoiler-free synopsis?
Oh, that's hard. And I'm so close to it right now. But I will say, actually, I think what kind of encapsulates like the concept of it, it's kind of Charlie's Angel meets like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So there's a lady detective and there's a martial arts Shifu, our hero, and he's on this secret quest for vengeance. And she's on this case and their past interacts. And then it's like mayhem from you know, there on basically. But yeah, it's, you know, there's crime fighting, there's a dog napping to be solved. You know, there's, you know, quest for vengeance to be fulfilled. There's a lot going on. And there's some very steamy scenes. So it was so much fun to write.
I think that's a great synopsis. I think you nailed it.
Oh, cool.
So you and I met at 20 Books in Vegas. And when we were chatting, you were so excited about the cover of this book because it's your first cover where both the hero and the heroine are Asian. And the cover is beautiful. We will make sure there's a link to it or like a photo of it in the show notes because it's stunning. And I'm just so curious, how did this cover come to be?
Thank you, first of all, because I am in love with the cover. So there's, you know, a lot of different ways to get covers made. You can use stock art or whatever. When it comes to finding Asian historical stock art, good luck, everybody. So there's a market for this if anyone's interested. So a good friend of mine, Jen LeBlanc, who also writes historical romance, does custom cover shoots. So it was really fun, actually. I got to cast the models myself. So she sent me like headshots of, you know, different people. So I got to pick my glory and way. And I had some ideas for poses, although I'm going to credit her with the ultimate pose. So there's this thing when you're advertising a book, right? You have to kind of think about, is it advertisable? Because there's certain, you know, constraints depending on the platform you're using to advertise in terms of the cover. And so initially I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to do, you know, a pretty like maybe they're holding hands or like whatever, and he'll have a shirt on. And I do have some like, you know, versions like that. But she also took this one and I was like, I don't even care if I can market it. This is like, this is the one. And I am completely in love. They just both look gorgeous. They both look so into each other. So I choose all the poses for all of my covers. You know, a lot of it for me is like finding the right chemistry that speaks to me, like about whether that respect, like looks like the couple to me. So yeah, it was a custom shot and I'm so happy with it.
It turned out really great. Yeah, we like it. And Rachel and I were talking about it earlier and how we like Way's arms. He looks really good.
Yeah, the shirtless thing, like actually added a lot. I mean, and it's kind of how I imagined him. So I was like, oh yeah, this is genius. And my cover artist, Erin, did an amazing job, obviously, with the colors and everything. So
yeah, it's a great combination of the photo and then the art as well. Something else that we wanted to talk about for anyone listening, Rachel and I just finished the book. So we're both really excited to talk about it. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the fight scenes because they're so realistic. So how do you kind of block these out? And do you have any tips for writers who are attempting to add scenes like these to their books?
Oh, do I block them out? No, I just gird my loins before I have to write them. I don't know. I just kind of figured out how to do it, I guess. I mean, I always when I'm preparing to do it, I think what can be helpful is if you micro plot out a little bit, like the sequence of physically what's happening. But I don't know. Maybe I watch a lot of shows with fighting in them or something. It comes very naturally to me, as by the way, do the sex scenes, which people always ask me about. I don't know. I love writing both, so I have no problem doing it, honestly.
So maybe the tip is everyone needs to watch more action movies before they write. That can become part of the research process.
Yeah, well, and for me, for this book, I watched a lot of Cantonese period kung fu movies growing up. I grew up on this, so this is part of what informed this book too, is just my lifelong love of martial arts dramas.
Do you have any kung fu movies you would recommend for those of us who really enjoy that genre as well?
I would say my favorite story is Legend of the Condor Heroes, which has 20 versions of it. So I'm not sure which is the current one, but it's a classic written by, what's his English name? So his Chinese name is Gum Yong, and he's a famous novelist. But I think that's his pen name. I think his real name was Louis Cha, maybe. But he wrote a lot of martial arts fiction, and they all got made into movies. And they're amazing. I think there is a Condor Heroes, maybe available on Amazon or something, but it's in Mandarin, but I think it's subtitled. Yeah, but the version I watched growing up, I don't think it's around anymore. It was the 80s version. And they somehow managed to have 80s hair, even though it was set in China in the whatever 500s. It's pretty amazing.
A period piece with poofy bangs is
totally, and blue eyeshadow. It was everything.
It's amazing. I am going to be looking into this later today. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Another thing I found really interesting in the book is that, like you mentioned, it has a lot of Cantonese and Chinese influences, and not a lot of, but a handful of words or honorifics that are in the English version of Chinese words, and they're italicized without any explanation, which I thought was really cool and I really enjoyed. What, I guess, was the decision-making process behind this?
Well, the decision has not been decided yet, actually, because I do have a glossary that I've been kind of going back and forth. And actually, I would love your input on this, because I want it to be, obviously, I want the English reader to be able to understand, the words. But I also kind of feel like the words should be understandable from context. And there's something about when you have to have a glossary, for me as a reader, I'm it takes me out. I don't want to have to look at the glossary to be what is this word? So I tried very hard to make it clear from the context what the words meant. And I also didn't want to have to do too much explanation in the book, though, because when you're in the person's POV, clearly, they know what this word means. There's a lot of decisions that, come about when you're adding a foreign language to a novel. So I guess my question for you is, did you understand what those words meant from the context?
I mean, if not the exact definition, then the context in which the word was used made it clear what it was intended to mean, if not a direct translation. In my personal opinion, I understood what was happening the whole time. I'm sure Lord agrees, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think there was a moment where I had to kind of look something up or sit and think about it a lot. I think it all makes sense from context.
Oh, great. Yeah, I tried to do that. Do you as a reader, do you like a glossary of terms?
Because I read a lot on my e-reader, I'm far too lazy to flip to the back of a book. The only time I ever use a glossary or any kind of supplementary info is when I'm reading high fantasy and I have no idea what anybody's names are and I have to keep looking them up. But that's my personal, extremely lazy reading style.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't usually flip back and forth too much when I'm reading on my Kobo, which is what I do a lot of. But I would also say that I always read whatever's at the end. So if it's in the acknowledgements or something at the back of the book, then I'll still read it for sure.
Yeah. I'm kind of also the same way in terms of not wanting to have to go back and forth and consulting. And then there's a part of me is there's Google. So, as a reader, you can just Google something to get, a definition also. So anyway, yeah.
You can also within your Kobo, like highlight the word and search it, right?
Search, yeah, like the dictionary.
So yeah,
that's very convenient.
There you go. We also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the different elements of the book. So like you mentioned, they don't really necessarily fit just within historical romance. There's mystery elements as well. So how do you use kind of the mystery scenes and the romance scenes and kind of balance them to create tension?
I think that's what makes my books a little complicated to write. There's like multiple plot lines. Yeah, there's a lot of different things going on. And in fact, in the book previous to this, Fiona and the Enigmatic Girl, she's a lady detective and he's a spy, and they both have separate mystery threads as well. So I'd like to, balance it. Well, everything has to reveal character. I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, it's about the crime they're solving. It's about their evolving relationship, but everything is told through character. So it's really about their reactions to everything. Right. And I think that's what brings the mystery and the romance together. But I do when I'm writing, I'm conscious of like, I can't, the best parts are when the mystery and the romance are going on at the same time, which I have, a lot of. So you're kind of hitting all of those beats simultaneously. So it's a challenge, but I like it. There's wonderful romances out there that are just about the relationship. I'm probably not the writer who could write 100,000 words of like no action going on. And that's not typically the kinds of books that I enjoy reading as much, although I know there's, great books out there. There's different kinds of action. It doesn't have to be just mystery and crime solving.
So I didn't ask you this up top when we were talking about your writing process, but are you a plotter? Like, do you have to have all of this figured out before you go in, or do you just wing it and see what happens?
Oh my God, that is the age-old question, right? I'm not a winger, but I'm definitely not like a hardcore plotter. There's always some germ of an idea that draws me in. So in this book, I kind of already knew the heroine, where she was coming from, because she's been in so many books. But I think I always knew like his mystery line and backstory. Like that's kind of what my starting point was for like the whole of the story in terms of plot. But it changes along the way. Like that's the thing with me. It's like I will have generally, what I think the first turning point should be, what I think the midpoint should be. But then somewhere along the way, the characters decide to take like some weird detour. And this happens like every single time in multiple places in the book. And so there's a part of me that really thinks that's just the way my brain works. It's kind of an organic plotting process where I have a general framework, but I don't really understand the book until I understand the characters. And it typically takes me a while, So that 6 to 8 months that it takes to write me a book, a lot of it is just kind of getting to know the character. And to be honest, I don't mind that because I like hanging out with my characters. Like I have, I really actually enjoy it and like kind of getting to know them on a deeper level. So yeah, I can't even remember what your initial question was. Oh, plotting versus pantsing, right? You see, I am not a plotter. I clearly do not know where I am going, but somehow I end up there. So,
well, and you mentioned that all of your books take place in the same universe. Do you have like a Grace Callaway's universe almanac of information that you refer back to? Or is it all in your head?
A lot. No. So I do have like a document that has stuff in it about all my characters, but a lot of it is also in my head. And what's interesting is sometimes when I think something is like correct and I go back and I look in the document just to be sure, it's like, oh, wow, that was way off about this character. Like, how did I forget this? But those tend to be more things like physical characteristics. And I was always kind of like this as a psychologist as well. Like sometimes I'm not great with names, but I will remember like the details of like the important details of like someone's like history. Like I will always remember that and what they said to me in a session, but I'll be like, oh, I don't know your name.
Have you ever had any readers point out like a misstep in a character's history that has been like revised in a more recent book? Or do you usually catch them?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky to date, but now that you say that and ask that question, I could just see like an email coming into my inbox. That's been fine. There's been some things I've had to, and I usually catch it in the revision. It has to do with like timelines, right? Like when people were born and like how old they'd be in relative to someone else. When you have like and when you've written their parents' book, when like, so my last book, Fiona, it's like I wrote both their parents' books. So in different series. So it was just kind of like, okay, I have to get like everything really right. But, I'll just do my best.
I hope I haven't jinxed this for you by like putting that out into the universe. But kind of speaking about your readers, you have a Facebook group for your readers. I want to make sure I get this right. Grace Callaway's Naughty Blue Stockings. Is this correct? That's such a great name.
Correct. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your reader group and what listeners can kind of expect should they join?
Oh, it's just like a fun group to hang out. I just post like games and like stuff about my books or just like general reader activities. Do some fun exclusive giveaways and sneak peeks and stuff like that. But it's a really cool group. People are book lovers, historical romance lovers. And it's really nice to see like the community that has been built, people supporting one another and bonding over their love of books, which is a great thing, I think.
You also have a newsletter. So how do you use that in your marketing plan?
I think for any aspiring author, this is a very important thing. Everyone should have a newsletter and they should pay attention to it like early on, unlike me. So learn from my mistakes. No, it's great because it's like the one thing, like really when you think about it, that and your website are the things that are like yours. It's your way of keeping in touch with the people who love your books. So, I've been actually improving on it steadily. It's a way to keep in touch with readers. And I do a number of things. There's like, a little bit of personal updates. There's stuff about like my new releases, inspirations that like led to writing books, sales, that kind of thing.
And you also have your VIP extras as well. So is that different from your regular newsletter?
That's just a section on my website that has like some like bonus material and some games and stuff. I'm actually thinking of like changing it and just making that like open to everyone and maybe putting the bonus content elsewhere. Yeah, things are always changing, right? With like indie publishing and best practices. So yeah, that's actually an area that I'm probably going to rethink very soon.
And it's a little overwhelming when you're indie because so much new stuff comes out all the time, like Patreon and Kickstarter. And it's like, do I do a Patreon? Do I do something else for my VIP readers? So it's a lot.
There's always something new, right, to learn. And part of it also is like, I've been doing this now, I guess, for like 12, 13 years. And this is partly my personality. I'm not the person to be the first to jump on any bandwagon. And then you have to kind of like sift through like what is actually here to stay and like what is actually worth investing your time into. And not only that, I think it's a bit about the fit of like who you are with like this new thing that's happening. I think some of the best advice I've ever been given as a writer is like, work towards your strengths, right? Like, don't force yourself to do something that is naturally going to be like hard and like unpleasant for you to do. I mean, I shouldn't say that. There's some things you should probably always do, like a newsletter, for example. But, social media is one thing. I mean, I think everyone needs to have some kind of social media presence, but there's lots of ways to do it. Right. So, if Facebook is your thing or Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, like, I don't think you have to do everything. I think you just need to pick like one or two things and do it well, probably, in my opinion.
Has there been any like new, like, so what I'm trying to look for, like new marketing tool or like new way to reach readers throughout your publishing career that you think has been a really big game changer?
Oh, that's a hard one. Like throughout my publishing career or what's coming up next? Because I think
either
there's
or.
A lot of things coming down. Yeah. First big revolution was really just like the switch from trad to indie, right? Like you all, like the retailers, that was huge. I mean, without you guys, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So thank you, by the way. So that's been amazing, that ability to just kind of, reach the public without the barrier of like an in-between presence, I guess. Social media, love it or hate it, is a big way to get out your books. I mean, you can't ignore what's going on TikTok. I am not yet on TikTok, by the way, because I told you I'm not like the first on any bandwagon. And I know it's an amazing tool and some people do it so very well. So I think that's kind of like a big thing coming up. And then I think the next thing coming up, which I'm not sure where it's going to all lead, is the stuff with AI. That's all frightening, but I'm sure there's also opportunity in it. So,
Yeah, the AI stuff that's coming out is wild.
Yeah. And I think it has the potential only to change the whole writing landscape, but pretty much every profession out there. And then in a larger existential sense, like the course of like humankind. But we don't need to get into that in this podcast.
This is why we're all reading romance books.
And not watching Terminator anymore.
Yeah.
Skynet is online, people. And like we've all seen this movie, right? It's like, and then I also saw somewhere like, are they bringing back the dodo bird? I'm like, you have seen Jurassic Park, right? Like I'm not the only one who's seen these movies. But anyway, I guess we shall see what happens.
Yeah, let's listen to Steven Spielberg and James Cameron, guys, and let's leave AI and dinosaurs alone.
The twist ending our listeners were not expecting. Before we wrap up, can you give us kind of a hint about what you're working on next?
Oh, well, I allude a little bit to it at the end of this current book. So the next story is Charlie's story. And for those who haven't read along the series, she's, it's her angel. So she's pretty much like the head of the agency. And she has her own past and her own mystery and romance to deal with. So that is my next book, Charlotte and the Seductive Spy Master.
That's a good title.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a pretty good idea. It's funny, at my retreat, I was plotting this book in the hot tub, which became known as the plot tub. And one of the women... I
love that.
It is the greatest thing, right? And one of the women brought us waterproof scribbling tablets. I've never seen that before, but you can like write, it's like waterproof paper. And so you can actually sit and like write stuff while you're in the hot tub.
This could be a game changer for writing retreats. I think everyone should lead with this for conferences next year.
Yeah, that's my game changer. It's not AI, it's waterproof writing tablets, guys. That's where it's at.
Yeah, we didn't have to get that complicated, guys. We could have just gone with waterproof paper.
And before we let you go, where can listeners find you online?
Oh, they can find my website, which is gracecallaway.com. My newsletter, you can also sign up via my website, but it's very simple. It's just also gracecallaway.com/newsletter. And, on I'm pretty much everywhere except for TikTok right now. So I'm on Instagram. If you want to find me, Grace Callaway Books, that's the same handle on Facebook as well.
Amazing. We will include links to all of those in the show notes so listeners can find you. And Grace, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so lovely.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Grace. This has been great.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo ReWriting Life podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're not already following us on socials, please come follow us. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. This episode was hosted by Laura Granger and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham, and our theme music is composed by Tearjerker. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing!